Jesus' resurrection was the vindication that his perfect life and atoning death had in fact conquered sin and death. Death is a result of sin. And Christ committed no sin, therefore death had no place, had no claim on him. See, this is why Acts 2:24 says, God raised him up, ending the pains of death, speaking of Christ, because it was not possible for him to be held by it. Christ had committed no sin. And sin's final payment is death, so death had no claim on Christ. One theologian wrote it this way: Christian hope is ever living because Christ, the ground of that hope, is ever living. The present reality of the Christian's life is defined and determined by the reality of the past, the resurrection of Christ, and is guaranteed into the future because Christ lives forevermore. Friends, that's the inheritance that Peter's saying, this is kept for you, it's waiting for you, it's guaranteed in the future because it's not so much dependent upon your present right now, it's guaranteed on the historical work of Christ in the past. And so what happened in the past gives you confidence for the future, the present and the future, because it's all dependent on Christ and his resurrection. Friends, think about this. The resurrection of Christ is the most astounding fact of history. I mean, this is the game changer. If Jesus was raised from the dead, if Jesus was actually raised from the dead, then there is no justification for Christianity that's necessary. I mean, that's it. That's the end game. That's the mic drop. If Jesus rose from the grave, no justification for Christianity is necessary. We're done. That's it. But if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, no justification for Christianity is going to be adequate. Get that? If he rose from the dead, we don't need to justify this. If he didn't rise from the dead, we cannot justify this. It all balances on this critical question: did Jesus Christ rise from the grave? That's the question that matters. That's the issue at hand. Right? We live in a cultural time where it's cool to be spiritual, but just not religious, right? So what happens is people will pick and choose from the various religious systems things that they're comfortable with. A little bit of maybe Eastern mysticism here, a little bit of what Buddha has there, a little bit of the Quran here, and some teachings from Jesus there. And they'll look at the New Testament and go, well, I like this teaching of Christianity, but I don't like that teaching of Christianity, so I'm going to take what I like and put it all together to what I'm comfortable with. That's the wrong way to go about this. The issue is not what we like or don't like. The issue at hand is, did he rise from the dead? If Jesus rose from the dead, you have to accept everything he says. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, you don't have to accept anything he says. He's just another itinerant preacher, maybe a miracle worker at best, had some cool proverbs, but that's it. He's like everyone else in history. But if he rose from the dead, you have to accept everything he said. Because who does that? Who's ever done that? Only he. But if he didn't rise from the dead, you don't have to accept anything he says. See, it all comes back down to the question, whether you like the teachings or not, whether you like certain sections or not, it's, did he rise from the dead? That's the critical question. And that's why, as a Christian, it's so important that we understand the historicity of our faith. Because what we celebrate is rooted in history.